Tell me, folks, a quick question here. You know, we know that a value-added tax is coming, and we know that the income tax is not going to be cut, or no other tax is going to be cut. We know there's a tax upon other taxes. Now, would somebody explain to me why? Because Obama and the Democrats told us that the health care bill was going to cut the deficit. Obama and the Democrats told us it was going to cut the deficit, going to get the size of government down, that health care was bankrupting the country, and we had to pass this bill because the CBO says, oh, yeah, it's going to cut the deficit. If the health care bill cuts the deficit, what's all this talk about a VAT tax? I have an idea. I've been thinking about this, and I think, you know, we still all have too much reverence for the federal government as an entity. We look at it with way too much reverence. We should apply the same SEC, FTC, and other regulatory standards imposed on private enterprise on the government. For example, why is fraud criminalized when applied to the private sector, but praised as compassion when practiced by the federal government and liberal politicians? I'm sure by now you've heard of the AP story out today. 47% of Americans do not pay any income tax. 47%. What the hell do you think is happening? Who do you think's running and supporting the country? 73%. 73% of all income tax rated revenues are being paid by 10% of the population. Right there is a fraud. Right there is generational theft. We have the people who are producing in this country dwindling in number. They are still targeted by the Democrats as the problem in the country. We are raising taxes on everybody who works. I don't care what class you're in. Your taxes are going to skyrocket because of health care, because of the VAT, all the other hidden tax increases coming, the sunset of the Bush tax cuts. And the money is being redistributed to people who are not paying any taxes at all, who still remain the darlings, who still remain the rightful owners of the nation's wealth. That is this is 25,000 times worse than anything Bernie Madoff ever thought about doing. And Bernie Madoff is serving how many life terms? He just got beat up by somebody the other day. Why is it that if you are a crook in the private sector for applying liberal policies to your business activities, you're a progressive and compassionate politician in government for doing the same thing? If you go take somebody else's money and give it to somebody else, you are a thief. Why is the government not held to the same standards as those of us in the private sector? By liberal policies, I mean taking money from people, lying to them about it, lying to them about what you're actually doing, cooking the books, fixing the numbers, bribes and payoffs. If you or I tried just one move, like the Cornhusker kickback, if you and I tried one thing in the private sector, like the Louisiana Purchase, we would be indicted and sent up to jail and made an example of. Crime has become institutionalized in Washington, as run by this regime. And they call it compassion. And they tell us, the people working in this country, that it is our responsibility to make sure that our neighbors, who are cast as some helpless, poor, incompetent lot of people, depend on it because they are the real owners of the country. They are the ones who rightfully own the nation's wealth. They're only poor because we have screwed them. We have extorted from them. We have taken advantage of them. This is the liberal playbook. Is there any doubt that if Nancy Pelosi were chairman or CEO of some big company, that all the lies she told about health care would be considered material misrepresentations, for which she would be criminally accountable in the private sector? You let any CEO lie, a publicly held company, lie and offer bribes and kickbacks to advance whatever the CEO's agenda is throughout the company. Make sure the shareholders don't find out about it. They get screwed. she wouldn't last a week in that position. We seem to have one code of ethics and law for the private sector, which is consistent with our moral and religious beliefs. We have another code of ethics and law for the public sector, which is consistent with what can be called nothing other than criminal behavior. We have to call it for what it is. Why is Obama historic? For all the damage he has done to our society? Why is Obama historic for all the damage he has done to our economy, to our finances? But then Bernie Madoff is a hated criminal. Madoff was a crook, no doubt about it, but who's done more damage to more people today and in the future? Madoff or Obama? Madoff or Pelosi? Madoff or Harry Reid? I'm just putting it to you straight up. Bernie Madoff is a piker compared to this regime and the damage that they have inflicted on all of us, our society, our economy, our finances, and now, with the signing of this stupid treaty today, our national security. The problem we have is that statism, which is this regime, takes what would otherwise be criminal behavior, treats it as a virtue. The media treats it as a virtue, all of this criminal behavior. They have institutionalized fraud, and they call it progress. And there's no sign that it's going to stop. Got to take a break. Right after this, we'll be back. Sit tight, folks. It's this simple, folks. We got to face this head on and straight up. If the policies of this regime are not reversed, we can all expect inflation to kick in at some point. That is an economic given. When that happens, more jobs will be lost. I wouldn't be surprised if we have a second housing bubble when interest rates inevitably increase, as they are starting to do now. More bankruptcies once the Obama tax increases and the health care plan kick in. The recession will continue. The government will continue to grow. The private sector will continue to shrink. And, of course, the government-run media will continue to act like a bunch of stupid clowns who claim that all this is unexpected, while they applaud it. The gross domestic product can do nothing if this continues but shrink. Stock market will drop in the next year or two. They're already skittish. World stock markets skittish today, including ours, over the rising debt crisis in Greece. Wait till they hear about California. The value of the dollar will decrease. The prices of energy will increase. The availability of energy will decrease. I expect that Iran will get a nuclear weapon. Obama's talking about, we're going to get really, really tough on sanctions now. But we're not going to get really, really tough on sanctions because we're not going to do anything that would harm the Iranian population. Well, there's no way we can sanction the mullahs and sanction Mahmoud Ahmadinejad. We cannot surgically strike with sanctions. The whole point of sanctions is to hurt the population, make the population pay for what the regime is doing. If Obama would just treat Iran like he's treating the United States of America, they might get the message. Stop and think of it this way. Barack Obama is willing to do more damage to the United States economy than he is to the Iranian economy or anybody else's. He's willing to applaud dictators around the world, from Hugo Chavez to Daniel Ortega, who are ruining their countries. In the case of Chavez, despite having huge oil reserves, there's an energy crisis. There's an electricity shortage because it's a dictatorship, or essentially one. Certainly a socialist country. You can almost count on the fact that illegal aliens are going to get amnesty. So the president will continue to be a failure and drag as many of us down with him as possible, except he won't be dragged down. He's in the White House living his life of royalty, flying around on Air Force One, inflicting untold damage on this great country. Nearly half of U.S. households escape the federal income tax. 47% will pay no federal income taxes at all for 2009. Either their incomes are too low or they qualified for enough credits, deductions, and exemptions to eliminate their liability.